Sometimes life is yikes.
And that's okay. You're not alone. Welcome to Yikesland.
How's it going, guys out there? Welcome to another great episode of Yikesland, your podcast for us talking about depression and anxiety in an open, kind of vocal way for us to be able to reach out to you guys out there who may be dealing with the same issues out there, so that way you may be able to realize that you're not alone in, the struggle or the way to cope with it. So we're here talking about it. I'm your host, Jelani Continues, along with host
Chris Fung.
Thank you so much for joining me here. If you're new to the show, again, we're here kind of talking about our personal experiences and eventually maybe leading up to having some people on to talk about their experiences as well, about coping with depression and anxiety, and just talking about general mental health. So thank you so much for joining us here. Chris, how are you doing?
I am still depressed.
Still depressed. Still depressed. It's gonna be a daily thing, guys. That's how this works, and it's about coping with it, and it's about learning to live with it. How are you coping with it recently?
Well, I was gonna say I think a lot of the time, when other people ask you out in public, how are you? And you just say, good. Or you just say, okay. Or you're like, great, how are you? And you kind of try to gloss over it. So I guess that's why I answered with still depressed, because I feel like I think we want this to be a space where we can say, how are you? I'm bad, or I'm sad, or how are you? Well, I'm still alive, and that's okay. That's good enough. That's what I'm doing right now.
Yeah. And that's the thing we want to really stress out there for people out there who are joining us. Thank you. That it's really okay to be able to talk about it, because even to this day, even though it's gotten more and more open out there, it's still on its way, and it's still one of those taboo things that not a lot of people really accept or really talk about. So, hopefully we reach at least someone out there with this podcast. So I guess we'll start off with our segment. Well, the very app that you had brought it up. How are you doing?
Well, I guess this week has been a little bit harder in terms of external challenges. My sister right now she's also depressed. She's like me. She talks about it all the time, pretty open about it, which I think is very healthy, or as healthy as you can be in that situation. But she's definitely been struggling, and it's harder for me because I can't be with her right now, because I have to work and I have to stay here. I kind of feel like I haven't been as supportive as I could be. But then on the flip side, I do feel like I'm trying to protect my own mental health a little bit, by sort of not letting, by sort of distancing myself from her experience, where I'm not letting it sort of bleed into mine. And I feel guilty about that as well. So it's a little bit complicated.
How's it, how like for you with that, like kind of inner kind of struggle, like you wanting to be there for her, but also trying to distance yourself from that because you're trying to keep yourself afloat. How does that work for you, and how do you deal with that?
Well, I think for people like me, and I know people like you as well, a lot of my value and a lot of how I see myself is wrapped up in me being able to help other people. But it's more personal when it's, somebody who's like your very best friend or your sibling, where I do feel like I can talk to people that I'm maybe a little less intertwined with about these issues more freely without them affecting me at all. But sort of to me, because my sister and I grew up so close, my happiness and her happiness are so wrapped up together that seeing her like this and not being able to sort of go out and save her is difficult, even though, you can't save somebody else. You can be there for them, and you can definitely help them. But, you also have to take care of yourself. And a big thing that they say is it's like when you're on the airplane, put on your own oxygen mask before assisting others. And you do need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself and not trying so desperately to be there for others at your own detriment.
Yeah.
And it's just because it's my sibling, it's an added layer of it's personal, and I feel guilty, and she's younger, and I feel like I am supposed to take care of her and fix everything for her.
It's almost this is calling back to the last episode. If you guys didn't get a chance to listen to the first episode, go back and listen to the story of Jelani. I brought up that, like, being the older sibling in the family, trying to look out for my younger siblings was a job that, at the same time, while I wanted to protect them and I wanted to, try and be there for them, at the same time, while trying to cope with everything that I'm dealing with internally, was a struggle. I mean, do you find yourself kind of like constantly dealing with that, or being, having the younger sister?
Yeah, definitely. The way that I've always thought about it is, it's like we're both driving in a car, and my parents are in the driver's seat, and or my mom's in the driver's seat, for example, and I'm in the front seat, and my sister is sitting in one of the back passenger seats. So for me, I look out the window and I just see the road, but for her, everything that she looks at when she tries to look forward has the back of my head in it. And I kind of feel like that expresses how our childhood has gone, and how it's definitely still makes an impact on us today, where I know that I'm so much a part of her existence and her reality, like literally because I came first, because she did not exist in the world without me present. And so I feel a big responsibility towards her happiness and her mental health, because of that, because I know that I'm just such a big presence for her. And my sister and I are the only siblings, so it's just us. And that also kind of makes everything a little bit more tunnel vision when it's us together. And we have similar issues. We deal with them in relatively similar ways. And so that can be a blessing, because you have somebody built in your family that knows exactly how you feel and thinks the same types of jokes about depression are funny as you. In the contrast, my parents are not like that at all. They don't have the same issues, and they don't deal with them in the same way. Like, don't really think that our jokes about depression are funny. And so that kind of created an insular world for my sister and I.
And so one of the things that I want to stress for listeners out there and people who are joining us here is, we're going to take different avenues in talking about, mental health and depression and anxiety. We may even try to make light of it, not in jest, but trying to understand that, like, it's a crazy, funny thing that we're dealing with at the same time. And while we're trying to lighten it up with just how even our personal views on it are kind of like, oh, this is just a funny, crazy thing that we're dealing with. Understand out there, guys, that we're not saying that it's not a serious topic, and it's not, things like that. It's literally our way of coping with it. It's literally our way of talking about it, and trying to make it kind of a normal thing for people to understand out there, and that it's okay to talk about for people out there, and understand that, yes, it's something that's really weird and not everyone understands it, but we can talk about it in different lights than just having it be all dark and stormy all the time for us out there. For you, I guess one last question. I brought up last week that one of the things that I have is that I'm able to really, really empathize. What's the word I'm looking for? Feel empathy for people out there.
Sure.
And also really attempt to help them out a lot, and really show a lot of, care and trying to help them out. But the one thing I cannot do, and I'm unable to do, is help myself. Is that something you deal with as well, where it's like it's really hard for you to like help yourself, but you find it more easier to help other people? Is that something you deal with as well, or is it different for you?
Oh, absolutely. That's something that I definitely deal with, and the way that I kind of try to work around it, and this doesn't work all of the time, but it's the only thing I've found so far that sort of does anything to combat that is just trying to talk to myself with a different person's voice and talk to myself as if I'm somebody else. As especially I will think of myself as my sister, where I'm like, what would I say to my sister? Or a best friend, what would I say to my best friend? How kind would I be to them about their issues? And then try to extend that kindness to myself. And that's obviously, it's not my first instinct for the way that I talk to myself. And so it's something that takes a lot of work and I have to be very cognizant of. But that's absolutely something that I struggle with as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you for sharing what you're going through recently. For me, recently, it's just been trying to balance my depression and everything that I'm dealing with just my creativity at the same time. I want to put together this show correctly, and I want to be able to maintain the level of quality that I've always strived for in the other podcast, and how we launch things and how we do things. But I've been really struggling with it because it's just kind of been hitting me a little bit. I'm not sure if there's something like setting it off a little bit, but been finding it more and more often where I feel like I'm really sluggish, or I'm really fatigued, and I really can't bring myself to want to do it. But at the same time, the creativity and everything that I'm doing and trying to put everything together and maintain everything, it's also helping me keep my mind off at the same time. So it's a weird balance issue.
Sure.
And sometimes
kind of a double-edged sword.
One side balances out more than the other, and that's what I've kind of been dealing with recently. Nothing huge or anything like that. So it's like you said, a double-edged sword. Kind of go back and forth between stabbing away and slashing at things that I need to get done, and then also hurting myself. So,
sure.
For folks out there who are joining us for this second episode, so thank you so much for joining us again. Last episode, I kind of went into early Jelani hood, I guess, if you want to call it that. Kind of talking about a little bit about, things that kind of led to where I am, and how my depression kind of started. So I have a second half to that story, and it kind of goes off from high school and onto adulthood and things like that. This kind of goes into a personal thing with relationships and things like that. So again, I'll stress this again. I don't hate anybody. I'm unable to hate someone like that. I may have anger towards someone, or I may have an issue with someone at the moment, but after a while, I find myself just coming back to, like, I just can't. I mean, holding hate in my heart it's something that it's another thing that I can't just add on top of this, of the stress of life and the depression that I have in my mind, and just the things that I'm trying to cope with. So understand that there is no ill will here, and there's no hatred coming from me in this. So going from this is kind of late high school. We talked about a little bit, last episode, but already feeling, more and more just, detached from myself. I kind of, my inner voice, as we called it last episode, that I deal with with the depression, telling me that I have to self-destruct anything that I really love, and especially something that I just don't deserve it, or I'm very self-destructive with my life, so one thing that I found that kind of aided me at that time was I went across seas with my father and mother, and we went back to Cambodia. We went there visiting on vacation. We were going to be there for like 6-7 weeks, so it was a long period of time, and had met someone over there, someone that my father knew their family, and one thing led to another. We were talking for a while, and for a while I kind of had, I guess, kind of convinced myself that things could be good, and things could be great, and after a while, we were engaged, and I had sponsored her over here and everything, and we got married, and we were living a life for a while. And after a while of being together, and everyone has their ups and downs in the relationship, and was it perfect? No. But at the same time, for at least a period of time, there was some happiness there. And going from that, this is when I had my children come to the picture there, and the makings of a family. So, working towards a house, and the 2-car garage and the 2 cars
Sure.
and things like that, and trying to get everything,
The dream.
the dream home,
Yeah.
the fence and everything like that, house, and we had built that, and we were like, my views on things is it's and relationship. It's supposed, for me, it's a team effort. It's we're supposed to support each other. We're supposed to constantly be there for each other. After a while, not really sure what exactly happened, and maybe it's just, I don't know. Maybe it was my fault. I don't know. There was a lot of arguments that may have come up after a while, and a lot of people, or some family members even, had questioned whether or not I should be with her, because of the constant issues of the arguments and the constant, difficulties in the relationship, and the just non-support from her for
Sure.
me, as I felt, and some people have seen. They were constantly telling me, like, hey, maybe you should rethink about, whether or not you should be with her. And it's almost like a weird thing, and I don't know if this is gonna make sense to you, but for me, I felt like this was like my choice. This was like the thing that I was in control of, and it was the only thing I was in control of in my life at that moment. You know what I mean? I don't know
Sure.
I don't know if it makes sense to you. Like, it's my choice, and it's my decision to whether or not this relationship is going to keep going, and I'm in control of it. And I wanted it to work. And
Of course.
I don't know if that makes sense to anybody out there, but I've tried really hard to make it work, and after some time, I started realizing that the voices started creeping back up again, and this kind of came up when I realized that it was really difficult for me to understand whether or not she was going to be there for me, support wise. So this all kind of comes up. Big thing that really shows this is that I was in a car accident, and car was totaled, and this happened maybe 6 years ago, I think. Car accident during the winter on my way home from work. Remember very clearly I was driving home down the road, and some guy thought it would be really great to kind of just like go for it across like the streets, from across all the way to one side street to another side street.
Sure.
If it makes sense to you guys. And he obviously was not going to make it, and he kind of just like zoomed out of nowhere and slammed right into the front of me, and we both had slammed up. My car is completely gone. He had a big SUV, so I assumed that his is okay. I was injured in the accident a little bit, kind of laid up for a little bit. I was off from work, had to use a cane, had my back pretty messed up, and I had to go to physical therapy. So I wasn't able to perform, the normal physical things that I would normally be able to do. For a while, like right at the beginning, I had to use like a cane and stuff like that for a while, and realized that this wasn't going to. I wasn't going to be able to do anything that I normally would be able to do, or take care of the things that I normally would be able to do at the house. And so what happened was, this is when I realized that the support issue was kind of a thing of like, I don't know if she's going to be there for me. Because when I was in my worst, darkest point, she really wasn't like showing up for like the support that I needed at that time. And, it kind of like really, while I didn't want to hold like this grudge against her or anything like that, it really kind of put like this kind of dark cloud on like the relationship for me, where when I was injured and I wasn't able to do anything, like for me, if my significant other was injured or sick or anything like that, for me, my idea of it is like I always said it as like, in a relationship, or you wear many coats, right? Here's the husband coat, here's the I'm going to work on the yard coat, and I'm going to do this coat, or I'm going to be the breadwinner coat. But whatever you are at that time, whenever the significant other or whoever you're supporting is injured or something happens to them that's bad, and you have to be there, you take off all these coats and you put on the support coat and you show up to play. You know what I mean? That's how I've always described it, and she did not show up for that. She distanced herself a little bit, and she wasn't as supportive to me at that time, and the dark thoughts kind of came into the picture, and I was in a very vulnerable state because of the pain pills and the pain just that I dealt with the non-support, and also the physical pain that I dealt, and then like the whole loss of the car and the whole issue of like not working for that time period, and it was just kind of all just stress and anxiety and a big mess of everything, and it put a big dark cloud on the whole relationship for me, and tried to work through that, and started realizing that trying to really get everything in back in order, and trying to get the relationship back on track. And from there, there was kind of, for me, this thing of like, she wasn't happy, right? And I tried to really understand why and how we could correct it. Was it me? Was it something we were doing wrong? Was it the place? Was it like, what was going on? And we even had like a conversation where I had asked her, I was like, so how do you want to, what's going on? Why aren't you happy? Is it where we are? Is it your job? Is it my job? Is it me? Is it, what's going on? How can we correct it? And the only thing she could tell me was that she didn't know. And that wasn't an answer that I wanted to hear at that time, and some people were telling me that, it's a really hard decision to make, whether or not you're going to continue with this relationship, and the stress from that became pretty hard, and the dark cloud started getting darker for me, because the voices came back again, and they started, saying that, started going to some dark places, where I started thinking it would be really nice if I just, was on a highway on the way to work, and if I just kind of just drove the car into the medium and like kind of just ended it all, and after like kind of many days and weeks of just like constantly thinking that, it's like, no, I need to talk to somebody. I need to figure this out. And I talked about it in the last episode when I had gone to my doctor, and I had talked to her and told her what I was feeling, and she had said, that you were depressed, and she, when she had told me that, of course, I described in the last episode that I kind of broke down. What happened at that point was that I had called my first person I called when I left. I went to the parking lot of the clinic, got out of my car, called the significant other, and told her, that information. And the answer that I received was not the answer that I wanted. It was I didn't just want like, oh, just I feel bad for you or something like that, but I wanted some acknowledgement of like, oh, well, it's okay, we'll get through this, or we'll figure this out, or something that you would think that like a supportive person would do. But it was, the answer I got was more of, this is an inconvenience for me.
Had you told her that you were going to the doctor?
I had told her I was going to the doctor.
And was that something that she was supportive of or distant from?
There was some distance, a little bit from that, but at the same time, it was, it was a difficult situation because I said I needed to go talk to the doctor about something. It's going to be kind of personal. I don't know. Just been feeling kind of down lately. And, first person, I think the call was her. And because, again, while we may be kind of rocky at that point, it was still kind of like, we're still a thing.
Yeah, that's still your person at the time.
And you're supposed to be my person. And as my person, like at the very least, you should like try and like say that like, oh, hey, we'll figure it out, or something. I don't know if like maybe I was expecting too much from it, but first words was, and she knew she had said it wrong. She's like, no, that's not. And she had tried to like backtrack her word, and I was like, that was the wrong answer. And I kind of just hung on the phone and broke down again in the car, and I just like felt like it was like kind of one of the lowest points at that point, and that was really kind of like a very sharp decline in the whole relationship of like not knowing why she wasn't happy, not knowing where I stood on everything, and slowly just going to a darker place. And it's really hard for me to say that I had to essentially had to break my family, and I didn't want to do that. And it was really hard for me to say because I had 2 kids, wife, the house, the cars, and everything like that. It was family, and the choice was to keep the family and sacrifice what essentially might be my life to my depression because it was getting worse, or try to give myself a chance to be there for a long period of time, for in some capacity, for my kids and everything like that. And so I essentially had to break my family. I had to the harshest words I've ever used for it is I had to take a sledgehammer to my family. It was I had to break all that time and all that bonds and everything that I had built there. And it's a really tough thing that I had to do there. And I don't know if it was the right thing to do or not, but at the same time, from there, I was able to try and focus on trying to heal myself and try to get help. And it wasn't going to happen there. It wasn't just like this happened over like a couple weeks. The time between the accident and finding out with the depression, was years, and it was slow deterioration of the relationship. And it was whether or not I was going to allow my kids to grow up in a household where I'm going slowly to a place that's completely dark and we're arguing all the time and we can't even like show something, for them besides like, again, I love my kids and I love everything about them and I love seeing them all the time. It's just with the dark, the thing that I'm coping with, it gets really hard to do that in that environment, to heal in that environment, especially with all the stress that I was under. And maybe I should have listened to the people who were telling me before about like, maybe I should make the decision earlier, to end it. And maybe I should have walked away from it earlier, but I was in my way of like, this is something that I'm in control of, and it's something that I think can work, and I can try, and I can do this. And essentially from that point, kind of broke me, separated up, distance myself, to try and heal myself. And again, maybe it was me just going back to the whole voice thing of like, oh, you don't deserve this, you don't, maybe that pushed me to really do that. But we are where we are, and I'm slowly trying to heal myself up. And from there, present days, we're separated, but we're trying to be cordial to each other, so for the kids, and
of course,
and that's probably the hard thing, where I'm constantly having to stress over like how things are going to be with the kids, and that's one of the dark things that hangs over me right now. And what really probably recently really broke me internally was that there was a second car accident, and it really played out exactly how the first one did, except this time I'm pretty much alone. At that time, that was just fresh off the divorce, and she wanted to go back to Cambodia to visit and just get away for a while, and I wasn't in any shape to take the kids for the period of time she was going. She was going for like 3 months.
Does she still have family back there?
She does. And so she had went, and the kids had went with her, and I was in a place of like total just sadness that I couldn't see them all the time, but like I was not financially, and just trying to heal myself, not ready to take the kids 24/7
Sure.
while she was gone. So
that's understandable.
She had went, and then towards the end of that 3 months, I had got into another car accident, and it played out exactly like the first one, and it put me into a very, very bad state. I was essentially here and having to relive probably the moment where my marriage had started to deteriorate, and where things got the most dark, and I was still just in my mind alone again, and left to my own devices. And so it really hurt, and I'm probably still recovering from that. At the same time, I just trying to pull myself out of that wreck that I was. It got really hard, and I don't know how I'm doing compared to that point. I don't have thoughts that I had at that point of like, man, when it happened again, and I was living through it again, and I was living through the same exact thing again, I can't believe I'm in this hell again. I'm reliving my worst moment again. And I was like, man, I really wish that car had just like really finished the job, and had completely stopped like everything that I'm dealing with right now, because this is just the worst thing that I could have thought could have ever happened to me, where I don't know if that makes sense to you at all, of like having to relive like one of the worst moments again, pretty much note for note. I had to go back to the same exact physical therapy clinic. I had to deal with the same exact thing. I had to be off for almost the same exact time period.
It's like a hellish Groundhog Day.
And at the same time, yeah, exactly. And at the same time, it was at the end of the 3 months. So when the car accident happened, kids had just landed back, and I couldn't see them because I was laid up, and I wasn't physically able to take them here. And it just was like the worst possible thing for it to happen to me. And it It was just a bad spot. But as dark as it got, I had slowly had tried to pull myself together and pull everything back together. And, me and the ex are trying to be, cordial to each other while, we may have our differences. I don't hate her or anything like that, or, and just slowly trying to cope with it, and take the medication that I take and take it day by day and try to balance work and my depression or depression sometimes, as I feel like I can't pull myself out of bed, but I need to, and I need to be able to try and slowly get to that point. But it's going to take time for me, especially with just how everything had slowly transpired with the whole end of that second act, I guess, if you call, of Jelani's road to depression, if you will.
Well, if I may offer another perspective, when you are telling the story, and I think this is something that happens when a lot of people are telling their sort of stories of depression, the way that you phrase it makes it sound like you think that you were very weak at those times. But I'm listening to you tell this story, and I'm seeing from the outside that you were very strong at those times, because you are still here today. And that takes incredible strength, given what you went through with external factors like car accidents, and internal factors, because I know exactly how ugly your internal voice can be to yourself. So yeah. I think it takes incredible strength that you are still here. And I think that you're telling a story of strength.
Yeah. And at least trying to stay strong as possible. Thank you. But it's going to be a day by day thing. And while, again, I didn't want to go into every detail of everything that happened with everything, but at the same time, like, I may not be the worst case of everything that might have happened to somebody, or things that might have happened to somebody, but whatever factors that may have led you to being where you are in your, depression or anxiety, just know that, you're not alone. Again, I think I stressed it last week, while your circumstances and things that you're dealing with, and the storm that you're in may be unique to you, you are never alone. There are many people out there who deal with the same things, or deal with a different type of depression or mental illness, that are like trying to cope with it day by day. And
every day that you're still here is a success and is a strength.
Yes. It's just, again, I talked about it last episode. I have this kind of inner thing of where I have this very self-destructive nature towards like things in my life that I don't like. I have this thing where it's like, oh, it's not going to work out, or you're not good enough to have this thing, or you're not good enough to go for this thing. And it's really hard, and I see myself just trying to ignore that voice and move on with just normal day-to-day things, but it sometimes does get to you, and they're slowly trying to gain back pieces of myself. Again, I described what it feels like being in the state that I am. I feel like I'm looking at a mirror and I see myself, right? And I know it's like that's me, right? And I know that's me, right? But no matter how hard I try to push the mirror or try to touch and get to myself, I can never get to myself. But I can see myself, right? And that's the thing. It's like, that's, for me, I feel like that explains my depression and how I deal with it. It's like, I feel like I'm apart from myself, and I can see who I really am and who I want to be. It's just, I'm separated by some sort of force that I just can't break through to get to myself. And I'm just caught in like a sea of just like, you know, blackness. But every now and then there's a tinge of light that like guides me to where I need to go and what I'm trying to do, and slowly trying to gain back more and more of myself and things that I want to do and things that I am. It's just, you know, it's a hard battle. You know, I don't mean, I don't know if any of this made sense to you at all. I mean, I you have different things that has happened to you as well, but you know, I don't know if it's relatable at all. But that's basically kind of where our kind of a nice overview summary of how I got to where I am and what I deal with on a day-to-day basis, and what I've done and what I've dealt with. But I hope that story at all somehow connects to someone out there and makes them understand. It's like, yeah, I understand, you know, and I hope that me being here shows that, you know, you can still be here too, you know, and you can continue to still be here in the future. So, yeah, I don't know. How do you feel about that, I guess?
Well, I was going to ask, there were a couple moments in your story where it was kind of clear that you were able to reach outside your situation and ask for help. Like when you went to the doctor, and then you mentioned taking medication as well. Mm-hmm. And I was going to ask how that process went for you. What sort of, did something change? Did something happen? Was there a moment where you were like, it's at this moment that I need to ask for help. It's at this moment that I'm willing to take medication. So I know that's a big issue for a lot of people, and I'll touch on that when I tell my story as well.
Yeah.
But the decision to take or not take medication, or go to or not go to therapy, is definitely not to be taken lightly. And
yeah. So here's the thing, right? In my mind of trying to slowly cope with the deterioration of like the relationship, and trying to keep it together, and trying to make things better, I felt myself going back to where I was, where the darkness and the depression was creeping back into me, and I really was more self-conscious about it at that time, because again, before that, it was mostly as an adolescent, as a teenager, as a preteen, and just now as an adult, I was trying to stay ahead of the curve and trying to really do what I could to make things better for myself, to try and get back to you know, staying as a family and doing that. And it was really hard for me to actually, you know, say, you know, go and tell my doctor about it, but was able to get it out there, and I was able to accept the acknowledgement that, you know, yes, I probably am dealing with depression, and them prescribing me the medication. And
was that a conversation that came up right away? And did you rehearse that in your head? Did it take a lot of, like, did you have to rehearse in your head, you know, how do I say to a medical professional what's happening with me? So
I had when I was sitting in the office, because, you know, there's always that moment where like, they take you to the room and you sit here, and it feels like the longest 5 minutes of your life, and you're sitting there and you're trying to figure out how to say it. And for me, I was just like, I don't know how if I can even say this, or if I can even tell her this. And eventually I was able to just come out with it and say what I needed to say about like me having just creeping back into just depression, and I didn't say that, but I said, like, you know, just having bad thoughts and things like that, and just being completely fatigued, and just describing, you know, how I felt and things like that, and them coming to the conclusion that I was dealing with that, and they wanted me to see a specialist, and they prescribed me some anti-anxiety pills, which did help, and I was on for a while. And the thing is, after a while, the thing that happened, I guess I could talk to this at this point too. I had a lot of different opinions on how I should handle this. And it's kind of a weird thing because there's a lot of people who don't really understand depression and anxiety and mental health. And so a lot of people will either tell you, well, keep your chin up, or, you should do this and it'll make you feel better or something.
Yeah,
like
they'll
that.
say, why don't you just be happier? Why don't you just look at what's like, good in your life and be grateful?
Keep your chin up. I was like, oh yeah, that's what I was doing wrong. I wasn't keeping my chin high enough. I mean, but there were some people saying it's like, oh, you should, the depression medication's gonna screw you up, or you shouldn't take that. And it was like those constant, just like different views and opinions on what to do, and it's actually kind of screwed me up a little bit, like of trying to keep a normal schedule of like taking my pills and taking my medication and taking this, just trying to cope with everything, because while I was doing okay for a while of taking the pills on a daily basis like I'm supposed to, after a while I kind of fell off a little bit, and understood I got dark again, and it's just really hard of trying to like get back on a schedule, a normal, just like, okay, I gotta do this every day. But the depression's fighting back of just like, no, you kind of just like, it's too hard for you to walk to the bottle and open it and pop it in your mouth. And it's like, this is what happens. In sometimes when you get hit with like the modes of like being depressed, and you get this whole thing of like, oh, that's just too hard to do. I just want to lay here. I don't want to do anything. Even if it's something fun, or even if it's something as simple as walking to across the street or something like that. It's
absolutely.
Like, no, it's too far. I just can't do it. I'm just gonna, lay here and not eat, I guess, or something like that. Yeah. Or I'm not gonna, bathe today, or I'm not going to do this or do that. And
can be especially difficult, I think, with when you're taking medication that you're going to see mental effects with, yeah. Because it's not like it's not like you have an open wound and you have to bandage it and it's something physical that you can see.
Yeah.
It's something where you need to take, in order for the medication to work, you need to be taking it consistently to see any effects, and you still might not see effects. Did your medication work for you right away?
I felt like I did get some aid from it. I mean, but it might not have been perfect, but I felt like I was getting some aid from it when I was taking consistently. But then, of course, I fell off of it for a little bit with just people just like, oh, you don't need it all the time. You took it for a while. Now it's just experience life and don't take it all the time or stuff like that. And it's just like,
did you get any negative side effects with it?
For me, actually, for the one that they described me, it wasn't like a very harsh thing. So it actually didn't have any real negative effects from that one. No. So that was I guess a positive silver lining, I guess. It was a silver lining in just a weird storm, I guess, of just weird crap. But yeah, I for people out there who are like looking to seek help, you should talk to somebody. If it's not a professional, try to talk to family, a friend, someone who you can open up to and talk to about like what you're feeling, and how things are going for you. And if you need to, take medication, don't stress away from it. Just understand that if it's something you're going to try, go into it and fully commit to it and see if it actually works. Because the thing about like antidepressants and things like that, it's about taking consistently, take it for a long period of time, because it doesn't kick in like the next day or something like that. It takes weeks for it to adjust you to get you back to normal. And at that point, weeks later, you may find out it's not working for you, and you might need to try a different medication, because there's many different types for different people. And it's all about trying to find what fits you, and if that doesn't fit you, maybe therapy will, and
or some combination of
the two. So
but
that's
there's a lot of medication. There's a lot of shame around medication out there, I feel, and this is definitely a space where I think we both agree that if you need to take medication, if you're trying to take it but you're failing to take it consistently, those are all places that we've both been.
Yeah.
And it's whatever works for you, and maybe something works for you for a while and then it stops working. But there's no shame in needing to take medication or deciding to stop or trying and failing. And the same goes for therapy. It's whatever keeps you here and isn't hurting other people, then do that.
Yeah. So, any final thoughts before we end off?
Well, I just wanted to thank you for being honest with us and sharing your story. It's obviously something that is very personal, but I think it's interesting the way that you were sharing it. Like I said before, you were telling it where it seems like you maybe felt like a lot of that was weakness. And I just want to remind you that I'm seeing that as your strength. And I hope that you can kind of create that voice in your head. And for everybody who's out there as well, try to create that voice in your head where you're able to flip what you're seeing as weakness and what you're seeing as your faults into strengths, that you're still here, that you're still with us, that you're telling your story, whether it's to one person who's a friend or a therapist or a doctor, or, to everybody on a podcast, that, you're still here, you're not alone. And I think that's incredible.
All right. Thank you so much. Guys, thank you so much for supporting the podcast and joining us here. And, hopefully you guys stick around and, spread the word for Yikesland and everything that it stands for, of just being a beautiful, wonderful place of just despair. But, thank you so much for sticking with us and listening to us as we talk about our personal stories. And, hopefully, as the show evolves and we continue to talk more in depth and other, mental illnesses and things like that. And, ways you can help yourself cope with it, and maybe talking to some other people, you guys can help spread the word for us and let people know that we are here and talking about it. And hopefully it's hopefully out there someone is listening and someone is understanding, and someone is understanding that you're not alone and it's a normal thing you deal with. So once again, this has been Yikesland. It's been presented by Pop Samurai Network. You guys can find out more about the Pop Samurai Network at popsamurainetwork.com. You can find out all information about our other shows. We have geeky shows and stuff like that on the network. You can check out there. That again, popsamurainetwork.com. And find us on social media and things like that. If you guys got any questions or you'd like to share your experience or anything like that, you can send us an email at popsamurainetwork@gmail.com. So it's popsamurainetwork@gmail.com. And you can send us an email. Just put in the title header Yikesland, and we'll read it out, and you might even get it read on the air if you want. So just let us know, and we love to hear from you guys and communicate with you guys and interact with you guys out there, if you will. So this has been your host, Jelani, along with host
and Chris Fung.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being here. And once again, if you guys are seeking help, or if you want you need someone to talk to, and if you're feeling in a very dark place, just make sure that you understand that there's a place you can call, and it's completely confidential, and you can talk to them at any time of the day, 24 hours a day. It's a National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and you can call them at 1-800-273-8255. That's 1-800-273-8255. If you're feeling, in a real dark place, please talk to someone, contact them. If you want, contact us, please talk to someone if you're in a really bad spot and need to speak to somebody, because we're all here, and if you're here with us, it makes the world a better place. And we love you, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for being here, guys.
Catch you later.